Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Rosa and Rubini podcast, Making Sense of This World. My name is Manas Chavla, and as always, I'm really pleased to be joined by Brunella Rosa, CEO and Head of Research. A bunch of different things going around, but quite an interesting macroeconomic development happening in South America. Brazil and Argentina's currency union and the way that it's related to the world's polarization is a topic that we'll be tackling today. But I want to sort of start off with a really bird's eye view because we've seen and we've discussed in previous podcasts, Brunello, the rise of the sort of emerging markets countries as more independent in the modern world. And famously, there's this sort of idea of an emerging G7, including all the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, but also two additional ones, Argentina and Saudi Arabia. Could you talk to me a bit about the significance of those two countries and why they might make a good sort of combination of the BRICS to really represent the emerging market?
Yes, definitely. So, we start the column this week by having kind of a general overview of what's going on. We said many times, Cold War II between US and China, meaning the polarization of the world, meaning that lots of countries will have to choose between one camp or the other. Very few will be able to uh, stay in between and hedge their bets, India being the primary example. We have discussed all this. We have also said in this broader reorganization of the geopolitical spheres of influence, a new G7 is emerging, EMG7 we call it, BRICS plus Argentina and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is kind of easy to understand. They have oil and will remain an important input in the global economy for the decades to come, in spite of the ecological transition and the energy transition. Not to the point that was also discussed in our recent column. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and China have signed recently a strategic partnership that is not just cooperation among things, it's actually a strategic collaboration on a number of fronts, from investment, technology, and of course, anything that is related to oil production, oil supply, and support, and so on. Argentina was a bit of a mystery, of course, and you know, somebody can mock the country that is defaulted many times. People say the crisis is not a crisis, Argentina defaults. These are the kind of, so to speak, jokes that go around Argentina. Somebody says, why on earth would you want on your side a country that is so prone to crisis, so prone to defaults, that is indebted with virtually everybody, including the IMF and so on and so forth. But we said already, don't be fooled. Argentina is a large country and is the second largest country in Latin America. And if you already have Brazil on your side, as you have by the BRICS conglomerate, so to speak, then by having both Argentina and Brazil, effectively you have influence on the entire Latin America, because these are the two gigantic countries of the region. Plus Peru, plus Chile are already in the BRICS, in the BRI of China, which means that by Argentina's BRI and BRICS with this Brazil as an important component, China can exert lots of influence on Latin America.
I see. And speaking of the actual sort of currency union itself, can you give us an idea of, in terms of scale and scope, where it might compare to sort of existing ones that we already have, but also some of the possible reasons that this came to fruition the way that it did?
Yeah. So as part of this reorganization and on making kind of new friends in the region, Argentina and Brazil have decided to sign some, formal cooperation on the monetary side as well. It's not the first attempt. They have tried in the past, but they failed miserably, because establishing a currency union is complicated, as European countries know way too well. But this time, it seems to be more prone to do that, and the timing cannot be better because in Brazil, they have a new president. It was the old Lula, of course. With Bolsonaro, we could have imagined that Brazil would want to stay closer to the US, given the friendship between Bolsonaro and Trump and so on. But with Lula, there's really no reason. So there's a good timing for Brazil to join in. Argentina, which has already kind of detached itself from the US for as much as possible, of course, it remains a country, of course, where dollar circulation is important. But then we all know the story about the default of Argentina, the trial in New York with the holdouts and so on and so forth. So the Yankees are not very popular in Buenos Aires. So this means that there's a good timing for these two countries to join forces and try to establish this sort of synthetic currency because the peso and the real will remain in place. It's like the ecu. The ecu was this fake currency that was created before the euro, and it used to be the kind of joint measure of account that countries use as a reference before creating the actual currency, which was the euro. The euro remains by far the largest currency union in the world, 14% of global GDP. This one will not go beyond 5%. It still will be one of the largest, probably the second largest currency union in the world. Other currency unions are like CFA franc, for example, which is kind of a bunch of countries in Africa that adopt the euro as a reference point. So effectively, this CFA franc is pegged to the euro to provide monetary stability and price stability. Again, these are initial attempts. Establishing a currency union is complicated. It will take a number of years. But I think the message is very clear. Latin American countries are now constituting a united front, more inclined to go with China than with the US. And that's what we have been banging the drum for some time. Latin America has a potential battlefield for proxy wars. We'll see in coming months whether that's the case or not.
I see. And I mean, this obviously doesn't, happen in a vacuum. There's a sort of broader climate of geopolitical polarization that we've spoken about before. And let's talk about that context sort of a little bit more. Where do you see that evolving over the next, few months or years? And specifically, how do you see big actors like China and Russia and the war in Ukraine playing a role in that?
So the point is, the world is, as I said at the beginning, is polarizing. Lots of things are happening that may even, let's put it this way, may even push further for the polarization or reduce a bit. Now, this currency union between Brazil and Argentina seems one of the signals that the polarization is in fact increasing, de-dollarization, influence of China increasing in Latin America. For African countries, I don't think it's going to be very different. Different in coming months. But then there are other things ongoing. For example, in China, we discussed how there was a U-turn on the zero COVID policy, although implicitly, and we wonder whether this was a signal that maybe a broader U-turn was about to happen on other fronts. And it seems that it's going in that direction, in the sense that China is distancing itself a bit from Russia, some of the extreme position on Russia on the war, and also it seems that China is re-engaging a bit with the global economy, with the speech that she gave on the importance of supporting the private sector, which is kind of the opposite of what the government has been saying for so many for the last couple of years, when they started the war on tech, the war on private education, and so on and so forth. That's China getting some distance from Russia. Germany, on the other hand, is increasing its close. Oh well, let's put it this way: it's reducing its distance from Russia because there's a huge debate on whether tanks should be sent to Ukraine. And then there's always in the strategic games the first mover advantage or the importance of the first mover and others just being perceived as followers. And so the Americans are sending the Abrams tanks to Ukraine. As a result of that, the Germans may be ready to send the Leopards, and the Brits have sent their own version of their tanks. But this has created a huge debate in Germany on whether these tanks should be sent. With the Greens and the Liberals in the coalition in favor of doing that, and Chancellor Scholz and the SPD will be more hesitant. I think eventually they will be sent because Germany is not going to break too much the Western Front and the NATO front. However, by simply signaling that there is a debate, showing, that there is a debate, there is a signal to Russia that Germany remains a place where you can have a dialogue and your voice will be heard. It's not as ideologically against Russia as the UK might be, as the US might be. So by showing that there are these differences in the debate, these are signals that are sent. And everybody's sending signals, as I say, Xi is sending signals to Russia by its new foreign ministers, as we said last week, and sending signals to the entrepreneurs that maybe the witch hunt is over. Germany is sending its own signal, as of course the US is sending more than signals, strong messages across the globe. So the geopolitical landscape remains in flux and deserves to be watched closely all the time.
I see. Lots of, there's an increasingly sort of interesting interplay between sort of domestic level polarization and then the more geopolitical polarization, all of which, like we've spoken before, is crystallizing into this kind of, post-American moment, China, US, Cold War kind of framework. So, sort of these broader shifts will continue to be present while the kind of micro patterns like the sort of possible currency union, both affected but also comprise it. And yeah, no, thanks so much for your advice and insight, Brunello. It's certainly a topic that we'll continue to watch for many months, but if not years to come.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Until next time.